and welcome to Babble Scribbler, the strange podcast show where a bunch of bronies talk about whatever the fuck we like. My name is Scribbler, and I shall be your moderator today. I am joined in this podcast by the illustrious Caitbug in her first appearance in several years. Caitbug?
Hello, my name is Caitbug. I am a voice actor from the MLP fandom. I've done voice work for two of these people in this get-together, and I'm happy to see you guys for the first time.
Illya Leonov?
Thank you. I'm Illya, also known as Morgan Free Pony. I do a lot of fic readings and a bit of music now and then.
Sorry, joking.
Come on, Scribbler.
What? I choked!
You ruined this!
Oh, I ruined everything. It's fine.
Okay.
Another returning alumni, Johnny Furno.
Hi everyone, my name is Johnny Furno, or Johnny Fireflame on my channel. I do reactions, song covers. I try to get more into voice acting, narrations, and top 10 reviews. Basically, way too much. Why am I doing this? Thank you for having me back. It's going to be a fun time.
And Starryflame.
I make horse noises with my mouth and I do song covers, and I am definitely awake.
And you also are one of the recurring characters in the Aprilverse.
Yes, I'm the most intrusive Alicon of all time. And I will be a villain at some point. I will definitely burn everyone's houses down.
We'll see. I may have plans in that department. Okay, so Kate, you need to leave in half an hour. So do you want me to put you first in the queue?
Maybe, yes.
Okay, so I'll go
Put
just down the
me
list.
in, coach!
Coach means the back!
No.
You want to be shotgun.
No, you're the coach.
Oh, as in put me in the game. I thought you
God,
meant like
fucking
seats on a coach.
Die, God!
Wow. And I got that. Filthy
Oh,
palms.
I have had enough of that, thank you, filthy pom thing. A bloody neighbour.
I am Australian. I can
Oh
do
my
that.
God.
I hope you
Yeah,
enjoyed
you
Happy Treason
criminal.
Day yesterday.
Yeah.
I sure enjoyed Happy Treason Day.
Right, okay, so this podcast, we are going to be discussing movies that everybody else seems to love, but that we either hate, dislike, or just don't really get the hype. So Kate, since she has to leave us soon, is going to start us off with this. So Kate, what is a movie that other people really, really like, and you just don't?
How well versed is everyone in animated movies?
Somewhat. But you get to explain to us what the movie's about anyway.
One of them is a Ghibli movie.
Oh yeah, everybody will know those.
I don't get Arrietty.
Ooh! Now maybe on your side in this. So, do you want to explain to our listening audience what is Arrietty?
Arrietty is based off a book of like, it's based off a
Borrowers.
book where the borrowers. It's like little people that live in a house, and Ghibli did an adaptation of it.
Arrietty, who is Arrietty?
Arrietty is the main character. She's like a daughter of her family, which don't like to be associated with humans. It's been a while since I've seen this movie, so I probably got some details wrong.
To be fair, you got all the main details right. Because
Yeah.
there's been a lot of adaptations of the borrowers, but that's always the main stuff they remember. Starry asks, do the little people have tails? No, they do not. They are just
Nope.
small people.
They are literally people, except small. They're like Kimmy, except small. Or-
How old is that? The series that has the
It's
people?
based on a series of books. I actually grew up reading these. I'm just trying to figure out who the author was. The Borrowers.
This particular movie came out in 2010,
Yeah.
but the Borrower's
Yeah.
book has been around.
It was first published in 1952.
Okay, I've probably read it then.
It's by Mary Norton. There was an entire series of them, but the first one is usually the one that gets adapted. It's a quintessentially English book, but every adaptation has kind of avoided that. Like, there was a 1997 film version with John Goodman, which was very much in the vein of Home Alone, you know, with the slapsticks, pratfalls and things. That's not what the book was like. So go on then, Kate. Why do you not like the Ghibli adaptation in particular?
I didn't like it because I just thought it was just kind of like bland. Well, bland's not the right word. There was nothing really intriguing about it, and I thought it was gonna go in a direction that I would have liked, but it just kind of ended. Just like, okay, that's the end. Nothing much really happened.
I have to agree with you there, because I love the Borrowers and I hated the film, the Ghibli film, because it does stop halfway through the story.
It just stops.
Do you remember what the ending of it was? Because it's full of spoilers for anybody listening. Don't bother listening to the podcast if you don't want spoilers, because we're not even going to have a spoiler warning. Everything is a spoiler. Do you remember where it ended, Kate?
I think it was on the human boy, and he was monologuing something about having not seen Arietti, and then she just appears, and then it just fucking ends. I don't know, something like that.
It's where she and her family are sailing away down the river, supposedly on an adventure, but we never get to see the adventure. The entire film has been building up to that moment, and then nothing.
Like, the animation was really good. I'm not gonna, discount that. It was just I just felt bored.
I'm looking at the Wikipedia page now, and it says one of the last things is the Disney International dubbed version contained a final monologue that was not in the original version, where the main character says he never saw Arietti again, and returned to the home a year later, indication the operation had been successful. He is happy to hear rumours of objects disappearing in his neighbours' homes, but that wasn't in the original version, so the original version really did just end with them sailing away halfway through the story.
Yep.
Has anybody else in the podcast watched this film or know anything about the Burrows?
I have watched a lot of Ghibli movies, but not that one. That's one of the few ones I have not seen, so I don't have anything to say.
Checkmate.
Do
Do
they have tails?
No, they don't.
Okay, so I know nothing about this at all.
You might be thinking of The Truckers, which was another thing about small people who used to borrow things, but that was based on a book by Terry Pratchett, which was adapted into a stop-motion cartoon in the early 90s, which was a co-production between an English and Australian studio, if I remember.
The thing I remember was, like, from when I was itty-bitty, like, let's say 7 or something, so, like, I couldn't remember what it was called. So that's like, maybe, but I couldn't hear everything Kate said because Mumble being annoying. So
I'm sorry.
Mumble being mumbled to me today. No, not your problem. It's mine.
No problem. I mean, I chose this movie because I was slightly more familiar with it than the other choice I had in my mind.
What was your other choice?
The Last Jedi.
Ooh!
I like The Last Jedi.
Ugh.
Damn.
Thank you.
You like it?
I liked it.
I liked it.
So this is more of an inverse thing, that you liked it and everybody else seems to think me.
I liked it as someone who neck deep in Star Wars lore. I know a good amount of it. I've played Knights of the Old Republic, and I think I've seen all the movies except The Last Sith. That Last Sith just evaded me when I was growing up. I saw it in the movie theater with my boyfriend, and although it's not a perfect movie, I thought it wasn't. I didn't think it was as bad as everyone made it out to be. I did not see the more recent movie, but I can agree with everyone about that one.
Yeah. Yeah, enough about that. I saw Last Jedi in theaters too, and I've got to admit, I liked it a lot. But my favourite scene is the one that everybody else hates, which is the giant dog horse creatures running through the casino town.
I thought the scene was fine. I just felt out of place for me because I'm like, why are we still at the casino place? Could we please move?
Because we needed to make a run time.
Yeah, I had that thought too.
Because the movie wasn't up to time.
The Asian character, I forgot her name. Sorry, she was Rose. She's chilling with with Finn.
Rose.
Finn, and
it was Finn, yeah.
I get like the like development and whatnot. It was just it felt like they lingered way too long in the casino world.
I think that might have been because they were trying to build them up as a couple, and then they just kind of went no in the third film.
It was a more distance
I wished, like, I thought Rose and Finn was fine, but I wish it was Finn and Poe a little bit.
Yes!
They did build that up in the merchandise. I remember there were people, they had a picture of Rey, and then they had Finn and Poe next to each other, and I remember that people going, it's canon, it's on the merchandise, and I'm just like, you idiots, it's not how shipping works. This is just teasing you.
The actor who plays Poe said that he was playing it queer the whole time. And then at the very last minute, they just invented a random girl for each of them. It's like, okay, we're waiting for the last movie to introduce love interests because we're clearly going to have a no homo storyline.
Well, it's because Disney and because of certain international audiences. Cough, cough.
I think that's a bit of a lame-ass argument for them at this point, the idea of international audiences. China doesn't have that big of a grip, as people seem to think. A lot of it is more to do with American audiences. They don't want to get emails from like 1 million mums and things.
They did have that kiss at
That
the
could
end
have been edited
with
out,
the two
yeah.
girls, so that was them trying.
It's performative allyship.
I was going to say, I think the reason they made Rose so minor in the third film was because of the hatred the voice that the actor got in the second film. Maybe that they'll we'll try and limit that by not making her so much of a lead anymore, perhaps.
Yeah, that was exactly why they did it, but it felt like caving to me. And this is a whole other conversation that we can have later, but yeah, I have so many issues with how Disney handled the last trilogy. Just the entire behind the scenes stuff was like, what the actual fuck are you doing?
Well, I know that Jar Jar's actor got the same amount of threats and stuff, and obviously nothing was done then properly, and nothing's done now.
You'd think, with 20 years under their belt of dealing with this, that they would be better at it, but no.
Wait, was it within 20 years? Oh, I swear I saw it at least
1999.
Wait, really? Oh.
Yep. Same year that the Brendan Fraser Mummy film came out.
Huh. Wow.
I still have plastic cups from KFC with episode 1 decals
Yeah, I
on
remember seeing it in the theater, and I'm just like, wait, what? My mind is blown. I'm gonna go stare at a corner for a bit.
Johnny?
It's just I am very split on the Last Jedi because there are a lot of scenes I really like Luke's involvement throughout the entire thing, but I am very sad to admit that I didn't hate the girl, but there was just a lot of her scenes that I either didn't get or thought was not very good. Like that one scene where Finn goes through this entire thing of sacrificing himself, and then all of a sudden, for apparently no reason at all, it's all just ruined, and it's all taken out of the picture because of the female character's actions, and apparently just made the whole thing seem to go worse. So I would never everyone knows I would never throw actual death threats against people for doing their jobs. But just for the character's sake, I was not a fan of how they handled her in certain scenes of the movie.
Perfectly reasonable. Illya?
I have no opinions whatsoever on the Jedi movies because I haven't seen them. But I was going to ask one thing about the Borrowers. There were some comics, I believe they were in the 60s, called Pixies that did the same exact thing as the Borrowers. I was wondering if anyone had ever heard of them.
I have not, but that might be because wrong country.
It's a long time ago.
Pixies?
No one's expected to know that.
I collect girls' annuals from back then, so unless it was published in the UK by Fleetway, I don't really know it. So, what do you reckon Pixies had in common with Borrowers then?
Well, there were small people that would use implements of the household to do their own little things, like they would borrow I remember them borrowing the egg beaters for some nefarious purpose, and all the thimbles for cups and that sort of thing. I mean,
that's exactly the Borrowers.
That's all I remember about it. But I liked the comics when I was a kid. Pardon my digression.
So, the Borrowers books, from what Illya was saying, were aimed largely at kids. And the 1997 John Goodman Borrowers movie was aimed very squarely at kids. But I don't think the Studio Ghibli film was. I think that was aimed more at the standard family fare, but adults can enjoy it the way that Ghibli often does. It has that dreamlike quality to its animation, and it was focused more on visuals and atmosphere than on plot, which might be why neither of us felt anything for it, because it was focused instead on atmospherics and nothing substantial.
That sounds about right.
Oh, hey. And yet, because it's a Ghibli movie, it wouldn't really matter what it was like, because everybody would go, oh, Ghibli, yay. They do seem to get a bit of a free pass whenever it comes to any kind of movie.
Oh, well, the Earthsea one, the Earthsea movie did not get a free pass.
I really liked the Earthsea movie, so I can't say much on that. I liked it.
I thought it was...
It wasn't good, but I still liked it.
Okay. Tales of Earthsea.
You can like something and know it's flawed in the same breath. Illya, what were you saying? I
was just going to say that there seems to be a tendency that anything that's ever been done before in the past, no matter how remote, is suddenly assumed and need to be redone now that we have computer-generated special effects. Oh, let's do it again just because we have that, and it doesn't always work.
Yep. Yeah, I'm just thinking of Disney's entire remake catalog for that.
Yeah.
Yay, this thing was popular in the 90s. Let's remake it now.
Let's
Why?
do it on nostalgia because we need money because we're Disney and we're definitely broke.
Yeah, we own everything. We clearly have no money.
You know
Or
what other
ideas.
movie I didn't get? I didn't get the
What?
Black Cauldron.
Uh,
I found all the. I thought all the characters were freaking annoying. All of them, all the mains, all of them.
Well, Black Cauldron was discussed quite intensely in our last podcast, where I go into trying to defend that.
I'm gonna
because
slap you.
The movie that ended up being made was not the movie that should have been made, and
The
I'll
little
leave it at
gremlin.
that. Also, plug. People have to go and watch the old podcast. And yeah, Gurgi was annoying, but he was also
No.
fluffy, so he
No,
was just a
he's
cat.
greasy. You kidding me?
He was
No,
fluffy. He is exactly
he
like a cat.
rolls-
Steals food, wants pets, will randomly give you love, but is annoying all the fucking time. It's a cat.
No, he'll lie and then repeat the same problem over at least 15 times in one fucking breath.
Like a cat.
Well,
Don't you knock that
kick
thing off
him
the
out.
shelf?
wait, who's this?
No, because he's
No.
fluffy. Gurgi.
He
The
gotcha.
Black Cauldron. That's called the Black Cauldron.
Gurki was super annoying. I could not stand Gurki. I could not stand the main protagonist. I could not stand the girl. I could not stand anyone except maybe the pig and the Horned
Well.
King.
So you didn't like Gurgi because he was small and fluffy and annoying.
It's
and
not
kinda
me.
cute. Is that because you saw him as a competitor?
No, actually, because unlike him, I actually learn.
This is true.
Got him.
You learn to be cuter.
Thanks.
Fluff bug.
His voice was stupid too.
Well, you definitely don't match up with him on that.
Yeah.
Right. So if we go on to the next person, do you have time to say it, or do you need to leave?
My mother wants me to get dressed, so I'm probably going to slip away.
Okay. Okay. So thank you for joining us, Kate. We're sorry to lose you, but go and enjoy.
Thank you. My opinions are better than everyone else's. Remember, everyone, I'm best. Bug.
Aha.
Guys, have a good one. I'll see you later.
Bye.
Wow, how do I
Blockbug.
get out of
Have
this
fun.
call?
Thank
Yeah, nice meeting you, Kate.
Kate, we need to chat more.
All right.
Okay. Next in our list is Illya. So Illya, what movie have you brought to the table that everybody else seems to love, but you don't?
Well, I think I'm going to broaden it a bit. It's a category of movies mostly by one director. And that director is Quentin Tarantino.
Ooh.
I have yet to find a Quentin Tarantino movie that I really like. I mean, I want to cite three here. Pulp Fiction, Kill Bill, and The Big Lebowski. And I'm sure they were wonderfully made movies, great characterizations, the acting was probably wonderful, but I don't like movies in which everybody's an asshole or a bad guy. I mean, it seems to be the sort of movies he makes. You're an assassin, or you're a criminal, or you hang out with reprobates, and there's just no hero. And, I'm an old guy, so I like heroes. It's the same reason I really didn't think much of the Godfather movies, although I understand they were some of the best movies ever made, and I watched all of them. But they were about criminals. There really wasn't a non-criminal hero amongst them. There was a few maybe thrown in, but that's not what it was about. I think that I probably fall way off the side from everyone else on these.
Not for me, to be honest, because I'm more in your boat that I don't really get the appeal of Quentin Tarantino movies. But I will open it up to Starry and Johnny first before I give my opinion. So, Johnny?
I do understand how you feel, Illya, because I also like. There are a ton of great TV shows, movies, and animes that I keep getting recommended by many people, but that I don't end up watching because, well, either A, as you put it, everyone is an asshole, or the world is just that horrible and cruel, and I don't enjoy those sort of stuff. I also enjoy heroes. I enjoy good situations. The reason why that I can like certain Tarantino movies like Pulp Fiction is just because, for me, it's just a roller coaster of insane violence and just nonsense, and I hardly take any of it seriously and just go along for the popcorn ride. So, but I do totally get what it is that you mean when you say that you don't enjoy the kind of stories where everyone are just mean to each other.
Yeah, and I understand your position too. I mean, like I say, I could see from the movies that they were well acted and well scripted. They just didn't have any appeal for me, and I actually feel a little wrong for feeling that way.
It does feel a little bit Emperor's New Clothes sometimes when everybody says, yeah, this person is an auteur, they are a master of their craft, and you're just sitting there going, I don't like it though. Even when you could admire something, when we go on to my choice later, I can admire the filmmaking of the one that I'm going to choose, and it's the same as Quentin Tarantino, that you can admire somebody's skill at their craft at the same time disliking that skill.
That's probably true in a lot of disciplines. Art specifically. I'm trying to think about who it was. I've so many women, so many wives, and so many girlfriends. One of my more recent girlfriends was a fantastic artist, and she has there's a picture. She died about a year ago. There's a picture that she drew of a unicorn that's hanging on my wall in the living room. It's a fantastic picture. She could just draw beautifully. But then there's one I keep in a box in my bedroom of eyeballs and teeth and claws and all sorts of things that I really wouldn't want to look at every day, even though they're wonderfully detailed. And it's that same sort of thing.
Sometimes it can just be like you like one thing by an artist or a filmmaker or some kind of media producer. And that thing is the aberration to their norm. And you're like, ooh, the rest of what they've done is not like this at all. I think a lot of people find that with Hitchcock as well. They'll like one of his films, but the rest of them are just like, no.
Well, absolutely. And it goes back as far as, as far as we can reach. Tchaikovsky didn't think much of the Nutcracker, but that became his most beloved piece.
Yeah, I find it amazing that some people, like Alex Guinness, going back to Star Wars, he hated Star Wars. Hated Obi-Wan Kenobi.
No.
Hated being in it. Thought it was dreck. Thought it was trash. But it's the thing he's most known for now. You ask people to name an Alec Guinness movie, they'll go Star Wars. Oh, that's Obi-Wan Kenobi. Whereas he had this entire filmography aside from that he said he was much prouder of that.
That's a special case. I mean, when a movie comes along like Star Wars that just totally eclipses everything that's come before it, you can't help but be swept away in that. I think it probably ruined some of the actors. Like, I don't do names very well. What's Luke Skywalker's name?
Mark Hamill.
Yeah. I don't think he did much after that. It kind of typecast him and pushed him in that.
He did. He's done a lot of stuff.
But I don't know any of it.
You probably will know one. He's the official voice of the Joker from DC Batman.
What do you mean?
As in the animated version, throughout all the animated versions and everybody else's interpretation, has been an impression of him.
See, this is what I mean. I know him from Star Wars, but I didn't know him from the Joker in the Batman series.
He did go on and do a lot of stuff. Literally, he was in a movie that I showed to narrator a scene of this, and he then said afterwards, why the hell did you show me that? Because he was in a movie in the early 90s called The Guyver. And Mark Hamill in that. Oh, do you remember
from the
scene
90s? He wore that stupid-looking suit and fought plastic monsters. I remember
Yes,
that.
and he turned into a giant cockroach monster and then died.
You see, this is my opinion of what Mark Hamill did after Star Wars.
You didn't know he was Joker, but you knew he turned into a giant cockroach.
Yeah.
Johnny, have you ever watched the Batman things that Mark Hamill was in?
I have watched a lot of DC stuff with Mark Hamill as the Joker, so I admire his skills a lot, but I can also easily imagine how tiring it must be to only be known for a single role, like how annoying it must be when everyone comes up to you only asking you to do, hey, can you do that thing you've done 100 times before, but again, and the exact same way that I want you to do it? And it's like I can imagine and understand the frustration that must come with hey, I have done other stuff. Do you want me to cite any of that? No, only that one stuff we want. Just yeah.
See, there's I'm just going to harken to a radio play at the moment that actually took that concept and made an entire plot of an episode around it. The radio play is called Cabin Fever. But in this, it's all about this tiny, threadbare charter aircrew and their little plane called Bessie. And at one point, they get chartered to take this film star to, I think, the Cannes Film Festival. And she has done all sorts of very classical cinema. But she's also played the Lady of the Lake in one film about King Arthur where she was practically naked from the waist up, and that's all she's known for now, and she hates it. And she hates that all the time she's trying to avoid fans who just want to take their picture with the naked Lady of the Lake. And at one point, she yells at one of the crew who came over and said he really liked her work. And this other member of the crew, who happens to be his mum, comes over and says, yes, well, most people, if they come over and shyly tell you that they like your work and that they appreciate what you did and that they've gained some enjoyment from them, most people will just respond to that with respect and say thank you very much and send them on their way with a smile, because it probably cost them quite a lot of courage to come and say that. But you let them have it with both barrels, and good on you for that, because who doesn't want to be seen as a bitch? And so that line kind of stuck with me on that of, yeah, you might not be that keen on that being the thing of yours that got famous, but for other people, that's important to them. And at some point it gets away from you and you can't hold it against them that that's what they enjoyed.
Well, let me ask you something, Scribbler.
Go on.
You've spent a great deal of time, actually, more than anyone else I know, sitting and just talking with Lauren Faust. Does she have any, you think, I mean, you may not know, do you have any misgivings about just all of her fame being derived from My Little Pony, or is that something that's that she's done anything else with?
She's done a lot of other things and she is known for it, but I think she's also just immensely proud of My Little Pony, even though she left the series very early on. She said that she was proud of the reach it had, of the things it's done even without her, and proud of the impact that it had on pop culture and also on people's lives. And she did say she doesn't agree with a lot of the decisions the show went with afterwards, and she said some of them, said the things that she would have done differently, but also acknowledged and said, but by that point, it's not my show, and if you enjoyed that, that's yours, not mine.
It'll always be hers.
I know, but I think that's where I'm trying to think, like, not death of the author, but the importance of viewership and of audience comes into it. That at a certain point, a piece of media stops being the property of the creators and starts being the property of the audience, like Harry Potter. Fuck J.K. Rowling.
Well, it becomes mythology after a while, because
Exactly.
She was only involved in one or two of the early seasons, and then everything else has been without her, but she's still sort of a god in the industry, or amongst the fans.
Yeah, but she did Series 1 and the opening of Series 2 with the Discord introduction episode, and thereafter she had left the show, and it was Megan McCarthy who was a showrunner for a long time after that. And Megan McCarthy, I mean, no shade on her, Hasbro kept making demands of new toys and things they wanted to introduce, and they wanted this new universe of humanoid ponies and all this. And Megan McCarthy took this stuff and made it work, which is fucking hard to do. I want a big crystal palace and a pink alicorn. Fuck, okay, I'll find a way of doing that. She did well with that. But I think that Lauren Faust would have done things differently had she been allowed to.
Yeah, I'm sure she would.
But like I said, there reaches a point where the creation, it grows beyond its creator. That's the nature of fandom, though, isn't it? That I haven't actually finished watching lots of the last 2 or 3 seasons, but I partake of fandom quite happily because the sandbox is more important to me than the canon.
Well, I mean, it is. It takes hold of you, and you either embrace it or you don't. I recall when, shortly after Star Trek was canceled in the 60s, Spock wrote a book called I Am Not Spock, because he wanted to disassociate himself with the character he'd been associated with for so long. And then years later, he wrote a book, I think it was called, well, maybe I Am Spock, because he embraced the fame that he had been granted so many years ago. And that probably happens to a lot of celebrities over the years. Yeah,
I think that sometimes people, they either fight it or they embrace it, and if it's the Barbra Streisand effect, if you fight it, people will know about it more. Starry, had something to add? Starry has disconnected. Starry will have something to add when she gets back. Johnny, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you two have basically said everything I could have said.
Do you have any thoughts and feelings on where MLP went, just very briefly?
Well, I'm pretty sure that this is going to myth a lot of the viewers, but I prefer many of the later seasons much more than the very first season, because just the writing and the way that some of the episodes went, some of the plots went in the first one, just didn't click with me as much. But after Lauren Faust left, in one way to put it, I think the show got better. And I know many would cry sacrilege and heresy for that, but yeah. I know it's a very dangerous thing to admit in the fandom, but yeah.
No, I mean, respect to everybody. When she was there, it was very much a slice of life show.
Yeah, and I have nothing against slice of life. There are just some things that didn't... I still like season 1, but I like it less than many of the later seasons.
Let's admit that the opening premiere, the first two-parter, is not the show's strongest episode.
The premiere is not perfect at all, but it establishes the ground.
It does, but I would definitely say to some people that a better place of starting is actually episode 3, because that way the entire season, including the finale, is very firmly rooted in slice of life. Whereas that
damn thing about the tickets?
Yeah, I mean...
Oh, God.
It's all about the characterization, and it's not the best. It's not. But at least then it's thematically coherent. Whereas if you have the opening, I think it would have been better if they'd done something like Rainbow Dash Presents, the... I can't remember his name, but the guy who did Rainbow Dash Presents...
Yeah, Rainbow Dash Presents.
Did his own parody... Yeah, he did his parody series about the show, and he said he started with midway through season 1 and then went back and in the finale of his season, they had a flashback to the opening episode and the adventure that brought them all together. And that actually would have worked better because then it's thematically coherent, that it's a slice of life show rather than giving the impression of it's an adventure show in the first 2 episodes and then it's nothing but slice of life for the next 10 episodes.
I'll give you that. I mean, that one with the cutie marks, how they all got them, really should have figured on very early. So
yes.
that brought them all together. And you could have had the Nightmare Moon episode anywhere in any season, and it would have worked.
Especially
Except
since
it brought
Luna
us
fucking
Luna.
disappeared. But she wasn't in season 1 after that. That's the whole thing, that you could have put it anywhere because she would have had as much impact anywhere else. I still think having her as a flashback.
Lunar Eclipsed had to get in there. That's all.
But Lunar Eclipse was season 2, wasn't it?
Yeah, sorry. I
thought it was 1.
Had things to say. I did like in one of the abridged series that when you said that they kept Luna off screen, the abridged series that I'm thinking of, which I can't remember which one it is since I've seen a few, they had Luna, what was it? She was there, but she was off screen a lot. Like, just not in the frame.
I think that might have been Friendship is Witchcraft.
No, I don't think it wasn't Friendship is Witchcraft. It was one where it was like the guy did majority of all
Mentally Advanced?
No.
Mentally Advanced, that's the one I was thinking of, the one who started halfway through season 1.
Not the one I'm thinking of. It was one I saw much, much later. Where I think it was the one where Luna was like, sand! It was like the Kitty Mark Crusaders ghost. The reason that she visits them later is like, have you come to play with me? It's been very lonely. In my sand. I don't know. It was just funny that she was there, but just not in frame at times. And they do that with Twilight too, in the episodes where, because Twilight was in every single episode, and there was like one where she wasn't.
She had to be to send the letter.
I think that's what it was. It was Twilight that was like Applejack would. The running gag for Applejack was she was in the mafia. I remember that much, and she had a lot of fun whenever Twilight was not on screen, making it known. And then you hear Twilight in the background going, I'm still here! It's like, shut up, Twilight, you're not in this episode. I can try!
Yeah, that's definitely a criticism of the early series, that Twilight had to be shoehorned into every episode so she could write a letter.
Yeah, that's the one Quentin Tarantino wrote.
So we should probably go back to Quentin Tarantino.
Just kidding.
I'll say my thing.
Starry and Johnny, didn't use
I'll
any
say
of
my
it.
thing for
We can have it in like post-podcast. Yeah. Because you know I'm going to have loads of
if I'm still around anyway.
Yeah, if you haven't fallen asleep. Have you got coffee?
I've got coffee, but I've got a date later, so...
Ooh, what time do you have to go?
Later.
How long? Like half an hour?
Later. I don't know. Typically,
later.
It's usually when I wake up, but the thing is I'm awake, which is why I'm like looking at the time like, it's 5 a.m. now. Usually it's like 2 hours later is when I wake up, so, and it's taken 2 hours for us to start the podcast, so...
Sorry!
No, it's fine. I just... Yeah. It's just like,
You have dates in the morning.
Time zones.
Online dates.
Oh, I didn't know those
Because
were
Australia is a weird time zone.
We're ahead of everybody, but like whenever.
You're the furthest ahead, aren't
Yep.
you? Because you're East Coast. Yeah, because I thought it was bad enough when I was West Coast, and then I realised you were like 7 hours ahead of me still.
Yeah.
It's crazy, your country.
Yeah.
But it gets colder as you go further south. Fucking hell, what?
Yep. Which is
And
why.
I'm just in Europe in the middle of
Which
it.
is
Me
That's
too.
why I wasn't sure whether to move to Melbourne, which is really cold, but I have a bunch of friends there, or move to Queensland where my dad was, but it's a lot hotter. I was like, I like being in New South Wales because it's right in the middle and I don't have to worry about extreme heat and extreme cold, but...
Also, Queensland was on fucking fire for a large part
Well,
of this year.
not just that, but yeah, majority. When the drive up, out of topic, I saw a lot of burnt trees on the drive up to Queensland, like, the fire must have come through here. But look at all the green that's coming from it, so silver lining.
Do you remember a time where that was the biggest thing the world had to worry about?
Australia's always had to worry about bushfires. I've always had to worry about them since I was a little bean.
I meant just 2020, where we thought that was going to be the worst thing that happened in 2020.
Well, it wasn't even 2020 when it started.
It
was, yeah. Which is when people
God, we were so
people were
naive.
like, at least January and February were fine of this month, and I'm like, let me correct you. No, we were living in fear because as soon as the fires were done, we had floods.
Yep.
So we prayed
saw
for
the
rain and we
footage of
got
that.
too much
Like,
of it. Anyways.
Oh no! I want it to be hot. Welded on
Uh-oh.
fire. We need this to be rainy. Flood. Oh, she's gone. And the other fire, flood, and bad internet. The triumvirate of bad Australian things. Johnny. Yes, Australian bushfires. My favourite Quentin Tarantino film. We probably should go back to Quentin Tarantino. Johnny, have you seen many Quentin Tarantino films?
I actually not that many. The only one that comes to mind right now is Pulp Fiction. I have been interested in seeing some of the others just because I hear so much about them. But I've only seen Pulp Fiction, and mostly because of because of Samuel L. Jackson. Yeah, so that is the only thing I've seen, and that's just insane popcorn movie to me.
I think the majority of Quentin Tarantino's films are classed as that, but I've got to admit I'm not a big fan of them because of that aesthetic of that trope that Illya talked about, that everybody's an asshole. But also just because you hear stories from behind the scenes, and I am learning as I get older that I cannot divorce a creator from their creation. I thought I could. I apparently cannot. Death of the author is not a thing I can do. Which means that whenever I am consuming media or art by someone who I fundamentally disagree with some of the stuff they've done, I find myself unable to enjoy that art, and Quentin Tarantino is one of those. Like, some of the stuff, some of the behind-the-scenes stories just make me go, ooh, no.
So what you're saying is he doesn't just look creepy.
No, he is creepy. He's especially bad at treating his female actors.
Yuck.
Like, Uma Thurman is his muse in some regards, that she's been in loads of his things. But when they were making Kill Bill, he made her do her own stunts with a car, and this car was not safe. It was falling to pieces, and he made her drive at 40 miles an hour through effectively a jungle trail. And she went off-road and hit a tree and really badly damaged her neck because he wouldn't let her be in a safer car, do a different direction on a safer path.
Okay?
He wouldn't let her. No, she got really bad neck damage and had to have, as I recall, she had like medical issues afterwards. But that was one of the lesser things that, like, you hear stories of. Not quite up to the level of Harvey Weinstein, but really not that far
Please
away.
tell me there was consequences for his actions, like directly to him.
No.
Yeah, he made millions of
Fuck you.
dollars.
Yeah. He's now officially retired from directing, apparently. So managed to eschew any consequences, because the only consequences that would matter would not be being employed anymore, but he elected it himself. And the last film he did is one that I kind of, everybody raves about it, and this is not the one I picked, but I'm going to mention it because it works in context of Illya's choice, and it's something called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Has anybody seen or
The
heard
name
of that
rings a
one?
bell.
I thought about watching it. Go ahead.
It's the Leonardo DiCaprio Brad Pitt one. And how familiar are you all with the Mansons?
The who?
The Manson family. Charles Manson.
Oh, I recognize the name, but I don't know a lot
Yeah,
about it.
again, name rings a bell.
I remember when it
Uh,
happened.
Yeah. Well,
You don't have to go into detail if that will take up a lot.
oh no, it's worth mentioning because Quentin Tarantino specifically themed his film around the Manson family. But okay, I'll explain briefly because Illya, do you want to explain it, or do you want me just to read off the Wikipedia page?
Well, Charles Manson, he managed to sort of insinuate himself into a group of people and convince them to go, and one of them I think was Sharon Tate, managed to get them to murder an entire family by just sort of mind control, just manipulation. It was a horrible thing, and a lot of people died.
Yeah, he was a very charismatic cult leader, effectively, but he called them his followers his family, and they committed a series of 9 murders at 4 locations in July and August of 1969. The motives were disputed because nobody could quite figure out why they'd done this. Some people believed he was trying to start a race war. Some people thought it was because the people whose families he'd murdered had connections to the music industry and he'd tried to be a musical star and they'd said no. Some of it was, they reckoned that it was part of a hippie movement, that it was openly antagonizing what they saw as the ruling elite, the idea that they saw American society becoming gentrified and they didn't want that.
My take on the whole thing was, and I watched it unfold from 1969 on, was that everyone glommed onto this thing as their personal little bit. Like the race baiters thought it was racial, and then the class people thought it was class, and people thought it was Hollywood. It's whatever you wanted to hang on it became what it was about. And it was really just about a crazy man wanting to be
murder
crazy.
for the sake of murder, right?
Well, that's now that he's died, because he died in 2017 at age 83. It's one of those things that he never fully committed and said what it was about. So people had that scope to say what it was about. But the big one that's predicated on this film is that Manson was an unemployed ex-convict who had spent more than half of his life in correctional facilities up and down America. That was before he started gathering his cult following. Before the murders, he was a singer-songwriter. He had a chance association with Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys that he thought was going to be his big break into Hollywood. The Beach Boys kind of really ticked him off that they recorded one of his songs without giving him credit for it, which he really didn't like. He was obsessed with the Beatles. He just desperately wanted to be famous, and nothing he was trying worked out. So instead of becoming famous, he decided to become infamous. I'm just gonna bring up this. Here we go. The murders. It's only one little bit. I'm going to read it out to make sure I've got it right. So the Manson family developed into a doomsday cult when Manson predicted an apocalyptic race war between America's black population and larger white population. Late in 1968, Manson adopted the term Helter Skelter from Beatles' recently released White Album to refer to the upcoming war. In early 1969, he encouraged his followers to start Helter Skelter by committing murders in Los Angeles and making it appear to be racially motivated. The Manson family gained national notoriety after the murder of actress Sharon Tate and 4 others in her home on August 8th and 9th, 1969, and Leo and Rosemary LaBianca the next day. Now, Sharon Tate was an actress who was married to Roman Polanski, and this was especially heinous because she was pregnant at the time, and I don't want to listen to this story. They strung her up, and while she was still alive, cut open her baby and from her stomach, pulled it out and murdered it in front of her. It was one of the most horrific murders that had ever happened on that level of fame.
The fuck?
Yeah.
It was pretty bad.
It was.
Really
There's a reason
bad.
why it's so
I
famous.
missed all of that.
Yeah, probably a good thing you did.
It would have been more famous if they'd have been allowed to tell that sort of story in the news. They couldn't even show that or tell much about it because at the time people would just be too shocked by it all, and had to be told over the years in a series of books and things, and people really got a true notion of just how horrible that day actually was.
And the worst thing was, Manson himself never did any of this. He managed to manipulate some very vulnerable, they were just outside of teenagehood, and he managed to become such a charismatic cult leader, and through that, his natural charisma, and also drugs that he'd given them, he managed to get them to commit these terrible atrocities. Now, that's the real life of this. In the film Quentin Tarantino did, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it follows a fictionalized version of these events, and Sharon Tate is a character in this movie. And the main character of the movie is a fictional Hollywood cowboy who lives in the house next door. And he and his, I think it's like his handyman, his caretaker, the Brad Pitt character, managed to stop the Manson murders from happening by unleashing things like flamethrowers and guns and killing all of the Manson family and saving Sharon Tate and rewriting history. And Quentin Tarantino makes this film and claims it has a happy ending. And it's all about, it's an homage, he thinks, to Hollywood of the time. Whereas in actual fact, what it is exploitation of a real, genuinely tragic murder. And he didn't get permission from any family members to do this.
I like him so much less now than I did when we started this today.
He's a very problematic director, and he said he wanted that to be his swan song. Now, that coincided with a lot of these claims of, stuff going on behind the scenes as well. So I don't know if that was intended to be a swan song or if it actually was. Either way, if that's the last impact he wanted to have on the film industry, was these manly men in 1960s, everything would have been good if we just had a few especially manly men and some flamethrowers and guns. I think that's a terrible message.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 100%, speaking just from my own point of view, I 100% get why you don't like him, Illya. And I think a lot of people, I think everybody who does may have better reasons, but yeah, I'm not going to change my opinion. Johnny, Starry? That says it all.
Yeah, I don't think we have anything more to say.
I didn't know the guy beforehand, and I don't really care about him now.
Anybody who co-opts Sharon Tate's murder, this is also the thing, she wasn't even a properly developed character in this film. She is this ethereal side character whom they rescue, and she gets a happily ever after without ever. It's her fucking story, and she was pushed out of her own story so that a manly man could have this spotlight.
I feel like the whole. I was reminded of another movie that I can't really bring up as everyone loved it, but I didn't get it because everyone who knows of its existence agrees that it's such a dishonor to the Titanic. This is an animated movie, like The Legend Goes On, and then there's an animated film that's based on that one in particular, where it's like they've heard.
Is this the one with the hang on? Is this the rapping dog one?
No.
Or is this the one with the big tentacle monster?
The octopus, where
fuck the octopus with the dog's face.
Everybody lives, even the captain. And I was so pissed off. I was like, no, they died. Don't you dare say that they didn't and that the sacrifice meant nothing. Because you're saying it's a legend, it didn't happen, but it did happen and people died. And that's, it pissed me off. And when you're saying, like, that it takes a real event and then gives everyone a happy ending, and if only this happened, I was like, that reminds me of this giant octopus. If only there was a giant octopus that could talk and could save everyone. Yeah.
That was the one with the magic moonbeams that allowed the character to talk to dolphins, wasn't it? And the Titanic sinking was actually the fault of sharks talking to sailors to catch whales.
And then also telling an octopus, you should throw an iceberg over there. Who can hit that thing in the distance? Oh, okay. Oh no, I've sunk a ship. I don't know what to do. Should go save them. I'll go save them. It's like, But at least in that one, the the people. I mean, the people that died in the real thing, they were background people anyway in the original film. So at least their murder wasn't pushed out like Sharon's one. Yeah,
Sharon Tate.
that's almost worse. Is that?
Mm. The focal point of the story.
Yeah.
The story. Johnny?
I think that all of this can be summed up quite nicely by a quote from Just Scorcher himself, where, by all means, tell history, but tell the freaking truth.
And just dramatize it.
Even the problematic one. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
I think we got sidetracked.
Oh, no, we stayed quite on topic. Talking about Quentin Tarantino. Everything was on topic.
Fair point.
Moving forward, Johnny, what is your choice? A film that everybody else likes, but you don't.
Okay, so I was been going back and forth between two movies. One of them, I might as well say the name of both of them. One I had in mind was Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I don't have a lot. It's a spy movie where I don't have a lot to say about it because I fell asleep during it.
Not a good indicator.
Yeah, like I would love to talk about why I'm not interested in it, but I can't because I literally wasn't awake. So, yeah. So I'm gonna go with the other one, which I can say much more about, which is, and funnily enough, another Ghibli movie. This one is Princess Mononoke.
Oh, controversial choice.
Hey, I know. I can already smell. I already smell the pyres coming in.
Yeah, you can smell the pyres because Starry's just come back in the chat.
Yeah, I missed. It was you like the title of it is, and as you're saying this, the Discord, the call just muffled. I'm like, no, I want to know what it is.
Okay.
I need to be
sorry.
able to talk about this.
Sorry, it is. My choice is Princess Mononoke.
Oh, Xenia and I were talking about that recently, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah. So the reason why I'm not a fan of this film, I don't hate it. I just don't see the hype. My biggest problem with it is basically the plot. I have seen man versus nature stories too many freaking times. I think it's a bored concept, an easy one to go to make humanity as the enemy, as so many stories does, and I'm frankly just tired of it because it's 9 times out of 10 it's always nature is right, humanity is evil. There's no way to find any sort of compromise or anything like that. No. It is pure black and white. So that is one of the reasons why I am not the biggest fan of it. Other reason is like, okay, yeah, the animation it's Ghibli quality animation. It's goddamn gorgeous. Like, I will never say anything bad about Ghibli animation. It's so goddamn good. But it's just a bit too... This is gonna sound very squeamish. It's a bit too gory and too violent for my taste. And like Ghibli's animation in violent scenes and context, that is a lot of... That it can potentially just become a lot of violence. Even cartoonish violence can be enough. That's why I hate Smile HD. That's an example of how much cartoon violence I think is too much. But yeah, those are the two biggest reasons why I just can't get myself into Princess Mononoke.
Okay. So, Illya, Starry, have either of you watched Princess Mononoke?
I have not.
No.
So this might encourage you to, or might... Oh, neither of
No.
you have. Shit. Right, because I'm on the opposite side to Johnny. I really loved it. Right. So, I'm curious, Johnny, why the message you took away from it was mankind bad, nature good in Mononoke of all films.
Because
that's not a thing that happens in that film.
To be frank, it has been a while since I've seen it, but as far as I can remember about it, humanity is in a settlement, and...
Irontown?
And what?
Irontown.
Yeah, Irontown, yeah. It's even Irontown. Like, that's another...
Yeah, that's pretty common.
But... what was it? Oh, yeah. It's like, humanity is in this Irontown, and for the ones who haven't seen the movie, there is a nearby town, a forest.
We should say this is in feudal Japan.
Yeah, feudal Japan. Very, very much inspired by it. Where pretty much it's all about like it's a fantasy world filled with like animal spirits and gods and stuff like that. It's really, really fantasy heavy, which I do love. But I just especially, maybe I'm just really, really, I want to say plagued by the ending. Spoiler alert, where a human soldier kills pretty much the deer god, the protector, the spirit of the forest itself, and ruins everything just because that nature was in their way. And just I know you may get something else from it, Scribbler, but whenever I think back to the movie, I just see another man versus nature story.
Okay, so I'm going to explain my perspective on this one, because you
Go
are
ahead.
right in that it is a man versus nature story. But the way that I always understood it, and I can remember because I watched this years ago. I literally bought this on VHS in 1998. This was my birthday gift in 1998. Was this VHS movie? So it's been in my life a long time. But the point I always thought that was coming across, and that Miyazaki himself said, was that he was trying to portray it as the humans weren't going out of their way to destroy the forest on purpose, just as nature itself wasn't going out of its way to punish mankind. But the spirit of the forest is quite benevolent and benign, that it doesn't go seeking vengeance. And the humans don't go seeking the animals and things to kill just for the sake of killing. It's more the idea that as mankind progresses and becomes more industrialized, it is this inevitable conflict that's going to come out of it, that neither side is particularly evil, and that no matter which character you look at in that, none of them are evil. It's kind of the opposite of any Quentin Tarantino movie. In Quentin Tarantino, none of them are good guys. But in Princess Mononoke, none of them are truly bad. Some of them are selfish. Some of them can only see their own point of view. But they learn and grow as the film goes on, and they realize that simply by evolving, mankind is going to come into contact with nature. And these ancient spirits of animals and these ancient spirits of nature, like you have things like the wolf god or the giant boar, these godlike animals, these animal gods. I'm not quite sure of their place in Japanese mythology, but that they are antagonistic because mankind is encroaching into their space, and that's what ultimately sets off this conflict and this inevitability behind it, because it's set in the distant past, and we know from the future that mankind and nature are always going to be in conflict because of mankind's habit of encroaching on nature, and nature's habit of, when mankind leaves a spot, nature will immediately take it back. Anybody who's ever seen an abandoned house knows that. But the point that Miyazaki was trying to make is that everybody's just trying to live their lives the best that they can and the best that they know how. And sometimes just living your life can mean you're going to come into conflict with things beyond your reason and beyond your understanding. And that your natural inclination shouldn't be to fight it. It should be to understand it. Because, spoilers for the end, at one point the spirit of the forest is interacting with the two main leads, and I think it's the leader of Irontown shoots its head off because she doesn't understand what it is, and so because she doesn't understand, she fears it and thinks she has to fight it. And it's only with that open act of aggression that the spirit of the forest starts to become aggressive back. Neither side is trying to understand the other, and therefore this conflict is going to erupt in a way that hurts others. And it's when the two main leads return the head to the spirit and try to understand it that a new kind of peace and resolution is found. And the background characters, I thought, were the ones who were trying to introduce this idea of we need to understand and work in tandem with nature, because if we try and fight it and overcome it, this is going to happen again. But we can't go backwards because our society has grown beyond the point where we could survive in just this feudalistic way we used to. So they need to reach a new balance instead.
Well, there's something to be said here. A lot of things since the 60s have been framed in terms of man versus nature. And the thing that they all overlook is the fact that there's no dichotomy. Man is part of nature. Nature is part of man. The difference between man and the other parts of nature is that man understands the relationships between himself and the rest of nature. And when you pit one against the other, there's always a winner or a loser, and it will never be okay until man understands his place in nature. And it sounds to me from your description that that's what this movie was trying to say. Am I wrong?
That's what I got out of it, yes. And I think, I'm trying to remember the interview itself, but I think that was what Miyazaki himself, the director, was trying to get across, is that it's existing within and alongside, not conquering. Anyway, that was my interpretation. Johnny, a rebuttal, please.
It does make sense when you put it like that, but it's just, again, I have just seen, maybe it's just because I'm burnt out on Man versus Nature, Source of Source, because I've just seen so many of them where man is either, it's aggressive, it's greedy, or it's ignorant, or so many other things, and then nature itself has to like rise up to remind that hey, we're actually cool, we can actually get together and stuff. I don't really have a good rebuttal. It's just I'm just not.
You can't just not like something just because you don't like it. It's fine.
I've been told my like, no, you have to have a reason.
I have a
No, I
visceral
understand
gut
you're
reaction
weird.
to not liking this. That's fine.
I very much understand your weariness with this theme. I've had it for 50 years. I've been sick of this stuff.
Yeah,
It's always, but I think that it's time to move on from that narrative and move into one of cooperation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cooperation and balance.
It's so rare. It's so rare in movies or in video games or whatever that I see where that man is able to cooperate with nature. Like whenever they're able to actually do that, that's more interesting for me because, okay, now we find a middle ground. Where can we go from here? But in so many other stories, it's always just mankind is stupid and here is why, and nature is good. Like, nature is good. We all know that nature is good. Nature is great. We kind of need nature. But it's not...
Just kind of.
But it's just... maybe it's just that simple that I've just grown tired of those kind of stories. It's just like I've really grown tired of romantic comedies because they always follow the same beat. Especially whether, oh no, we misunderstood each other. Now we have to mope and dope for 10 to 30 minutes before we can finally get back together because, oh no, we misunderstood. Like, of course you misunderstood. It's like when you just see a character doing things on screen that's so obviously stupid and you're like, use your brain. Like, just look around and see the connections and see how you're wrong for yourself and then move on from there. Don't spend the entire story just being a whoops, I am me, and therefore that means I'm stupid because I'm supposed to be either the bad guy or the screw up or whatever. Therefore, I will do dumb things until it's literally carved into neon cardboard in front of me.
So maybe what you're tired of is less man versus nature and is more the tropes that go along with that particular inciting incident.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe there's a lot more underneath than I think.
It's perfectly reasonable. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. The early 90s was such a plethora of man versus nature media. You have no fucking idea. Oh my god, the number of times I was made to watch Fern Gully in school.
I was about to mention Fern Gully.
Yeah, that thing, save the rainforests. Are we talking about Brazilian rainforests? No, the ones in Australia. Aren't they fine? Yes, but save them. What?
But all that toxic love.
I mean, Tim Curry was the best thing to come out of that film. But, yeah.
I guess I'm also just tired of seeing movies and stories where people are being stupid for stupid reasons.
In which case, you're just tired of humanity. Because there's a lot of that going around.
Oh, yes, I know. But I'm being optimistic, cautiously optimistic.
Right, does anybody have anything else to add about Mononoke or man versus nature movies? No? Okay.
Yeah, I think you sealed it pretty well, yeah.
After I waited for a good 5 minutes about a thematic weight behind Princess Mononoke. Sorry, I lost track of my own sentence halfway through then because I managed to stab myself on a nail. Ow. I need to fix this chair. Right, okay. Starry,
2.
what movie did you bring to the table that everybody else likes that you just go, what? Why?
2 words.
Go on.
Mad Max.
No, you're not allowed to talk about Fury Road again.
No, okay, I have a legit one.
I will put a link in the description for everybody where Starry waxed lyrical ad infinitum
I tried
about Mad Max
I
Fury
tried
Road.
to, and then everyone was like, no, you don't get it. Particularly you're like, no, you don't understand how Mad Max works. And I was just like, yeah, but I went into it without... Anyway.
I know, and I get that. But now you do know, you still don't like it, and that's
Yeah,
okay.
well, I still have people that are like, you don't understand. I'm like, no, I do, but I just didn't like it.
You don't get it, man.
So I've got a story for this movie in particular before I give the title. Imagine 15-year-old Starryflame and her friend going into the movie theaters, going to see Confessions of a Shopaholic, only to find out it didn't come out for a few days. However, there was a film to save the day, a film that I'd seen on trailers that did not present itself as what it actually... Well, it did, but it didn't mention the rating of it. So, the film was called Watchmen.
Oh no.
Oh boy.
So, imagine the people when we bought the in it. I mean, the film, you needed your ID card and everything to be checked out, but they didn't say anything with these two girls that obviously went in to watch a movie about dresses. They didn't. I was like, oh, I've heard of this thing. 10 seconds go in and the guy is brutally murdered.
Yeah.
And there's rape. And there's like death in the credits, and needless to say and there's like kids being kidnapped, and then I don't know what happened to them in between, but then they're fed to dogs, and the only reason that the guy found out that the girl was there was because her panties were in the dog's yard, if I remember correctly, which yeah.
Yep.
So so after the movie, my friend was like, I'm choosing the next one. Ironically, we never did see another film together, but we did hang out. But yeah, so I had stigma, would that be the right word? I had an issue with this film. My brother saw it later and was like, it's actually a decent film. It's like, no, it's terrible, bad. Which is why. But now, thinking about it as in my 20s, it wouldn't have been so bad if I saw it to this day and I knew what I was getting in for.
How old were you when you saw it?
15. Barely 15.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, is that we were barely the right age to see it, and the guy that ticketed it didn't say anything to warn us when we had clearly gone in to see a movie about dress shopping. I haven't seen that movie, The Confessions of a Shopaholic, but I know that's what we went into. It wasn't coming out to Thursday, and it was like Tuesday.
Yeah, film ship. Isla Fisher was good in it, but like the book's better.
Yeah,
Read the book.
so like, I haven't seen it in so long. I literally last week I pulled it up to check everything. I was like, I think there was rape. I remember sex. I remember.
Yep,
Yeah.
there is. One of the characters is the product of rape.
Because they did show it on the screen too. Like, I remember her being grabbed, and I was like, that's really uncomfortable. I feel really uncomfortable here. I don't understand. Yeah. And then, like,
It's really accurate to the comic.
because, like,
Well, apart from
the
the
whole
ending.
superhero thing was, I don't think it was becoming popular, but there were enough superhero films around back then that I thought it was going to be another
It was
one
a
of
year
them.
after Iron Man.
Yeah.
It was 1 year after Iron Man, and I think it was around the same. I think it was around the same time as Captain
So I was
America.
expecting
So
like
it
that,
it was just going into that
and
year.
it was not.
It was not long after the Nolan Batman films.
Yeah. Because, like, the trailers didn't foreshadow any of that. And it didn't foreshadow how much death, how graphic it would be, how traumatized. Like, I still remember the bathroom scene. I don't remember quite the context, but I remember the blood flowing from under the door, and I was just like, no.
Yeah, it's a Zack Snyder film when Zack Snyder was very much let off his leash.
Yeah. I don't remember a lot of it, thank
would it be worse if I
goodness.
said the comic's actually worse?
Yeah, I bet.
There's bits that they left out because the comic is way worse.
Yeah.
Like, the comic There's one tiny bit of animation, but in the comic, I don't know if the animation made it into the theatrical cut. There's a pirate who floats to land on a raft made of the dead bodies of his other crewmates.
I mean, he's
kind of
practical
thing.
if nothing else. Question mark?
Yeah. Johnny, you have something to say?
I have never seen like the movie. I know of the story and I know of the characters because I am a nerd who does way too much research on certain things. But I had not heard of those things happening in the movie. I know about Dr. Manhattan and how it's like he's all naked and stuff all the time. But
yeah, it's funny how that's the bit people seem to remember when there's literal rape and nuclear holocaust in it.
And a guy being thrown out the window.
Yeah, and of course, and of course, like Rorschach and all the things he goes through. But I had not heard of the whole thing of like children killed, fed to dogs, and all that stuff. So,
That's the stuff that Rorschach. That's why he's Rorschach, because he said that, like, Watchmen started out as a comic as a direct retaliation against things going on in DC and Marvel in the 80s. That originally, if I am recalling this correctly, the creators wanted to use DC characters and were not allowed. They wanted to do like an Elseworlds alternative universe. And when they weren't allowed, they said, fine, we'll use analogues of them, which is why you have characters who are very close to existing superheroes in theme and look.
Isn't one of them Owlman?
Yes. And guess who he's takeoff of?
I would say Batman, but then there's Rorschach,
Yes.
So...
Nope. Rorschach is kind of a blend of Batman and Spider-Man. He is a street-level hero. And he is a realistic depiction of what would it be like to be a street-level hero if you had no rich trust fund to pull from, if you just had you, the criminals, and your brain. And the way that Batman and Spider-Man deal with it is not the way that Rorschach deals with it. He deals with it by being a violent psychopath.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, he is of the mindset of it doesn't matter how much good you do. If you have done bad, then you're bad. Like, just black and white like that.
Yes. And he doesn't think he's a good person, but he does think that he's the best person to clean up the streets. But yeah, Rorschach is the kind of analog of Batman and Spider-Man. You've got Owlman, who was very much Batman. You've got Silver Spectre, who's meant to be like Supergirl and Wonder Woman, the token female powerhouse character. Except it turns out she's in an abusive marriage. She has an affair with Owlman. She does all these things that those characters would never be allowed to do, or at least at that point in their history would never be allowed to do, because this was the early 80s and late 80s, I think. And it was the things that go on in that story were a direct retaliation against themes in comic books. But it meant that, up until 2009, it was largely believed to be unfilmable. Illya.
Well, that's a little confusing because you're saying they wanted to use the DC characters and they ended up making their own analogs, but they made them nothing like the DC characters. Does that mean that if they'd have brought the DC characters in, they'd have made them like Spider-Man would have been an asshole? And I mean, is that what they would have done? That seems strange.
I think it was one of those that it changed from its original premise when they had to use original characters, but it was going to originally be. The idea behind this world is that the Cold War never stopped, that the Cold War kept going, and I think I'm not sure if it's Nixon or Reagan, but one of them is on like their 4th term, and there is this constant threat of nuclear war from Russia, and it's the idea that no matter what happens, you've always got these corrupt politicians in charge in a world of superheroes where politics has gone to a point where politicians are very disconnected from the average everyday people.
Well, that sounds perfectly normal.
It does in 2020, it fucking does. But in the 80s, it sounded really wild and crazy. Oh, fuck. Right, now I'm depressed. But yeah, it's the idea that that was the background of this world, that superheroes turned up during World War II, and their mere presence changed the timeline. And if they'd stuck with the DC heroes, there likely would have been some kind of inciting incident like that. There's something in the past that changes the present, and the superheroes within it to be different people. So, for example, there's an Elseworld story out there where the original Green Lantern is a guy who was crushed by a train and then reached out and grabbed a green lantern that powered and was given a power ring. And sorry, I've got to just let the cat in for a sec. Sorry, oh fuck, he's got a mouse.
Oh no, is it alive or dead?
I brought you
mouse.
a present. I come with a tribute, great one.
I'm very lucky that Tessa hasn't done that yet, and I know there's lizards, like barking lizards around here, and I haven't seen any in a while, so I'm fortunate she hasn't brought me a gift yet.
I was going to say, if Schrodinger doesn't observe the cat, and so the cat is both alive and dead at the same time, does that mean that the cat is a zombie?
Yes. It's undead.
Technically.
Undead cat.
But I have heard like several theories on why cats bring like dead mouse and stuff to their owners. Like I heard one version where it's like they do it because they don't think you're a good enough hunter.
Yeah.
So they come to be like, hey, this is how it's done.
Actually,
The stuff you're bringing me just doesn't taste good. Let me show
actually,
you.
I have a thing to say, because just before I was talking to Tessa's foster mother, and the day or so before to pick her up, apparently she brought a spider in, a huntsman spider, and it was still alive, I believe, because she took it outside, and she said that was the most she'd ever heard this cat meow, because she was like meowing for her to go check out what she brought. So immediately this lady, took the spider outside, came back, and apparently Tessa had the most offended look on her face. It was such.
I thought sure you were a fly.
She was like, I brought you a gift, and you've rejected it. How dare you? It was the only time she'd ever done this too, apparently.
Well, I never. I'm going to scratch up the couch now.
I had a cat, and I had a cat door for the cat, and this cat was the most prolific hunter that I'd ever seen. It brought all manner of things into the house, mostly chipmunks, but also mice and a turtle one time and lizards and all sorts of birds. It brought a live crow into my house and let it go. And you know how big a crow is? Crow's a big bird.
Back.
And the crow flew all over the inside of the house, shitting green stuff all over. I'm still. I had to throw one of my keyboards away because it was so full of crow shit.
What?
And
Where
then,
did you get a nuclear crow inside?
Welcome back, Scribbler.
Oh, you're gonna love this. He didn't have a mouse.
He'd have a mouse.
You brought a mouse. Brought a mouse in.
No. I thought he's a hunting cat. He brings mice and things all the time, and sometimes I can get them off him before they die. He didn't have a mouse. He didn't have anything that was alive. He had a potato.
Oh, what now?
I have no idea where the fuck he's got this. It's cooked, but it's cold, and he brought me a potato.
He's like,
I think my cat has like raided somebody's barbecue.
I think he's like, I see you did not like my gifts I have brought for you. I will bring you some goddamn French fries. I couldn't cut it, so here, just take the potato.
It made me laugh. It's like it's sitting outside ready for the badgers to have later, but they've got this potato with cat fangs in it.
It's just looking at you like, look, I've been told you're trying to get a new diet, so here you go.
It's potato diet. It's a potato cat.
It's exactly. Oh my god, that's amazing.
Cats are not certain about what's real and what's not. Let me tell you the story of something that happened about 30 years ago. This was another cat, not the one that brought the crow in the house. But the cat did have a cat door in the kitchen in a window. So the cat would come in and out, and we heard this cat door flapping all the time. We didn't think anything about it. But one night we were sitting and watching television, and we heard the cat door. Several times in succession, the cat door would flip open, and the cat would rush into the room and run behind the speakers. And then it would rush out again. And after it did this about 5 times, the cat went to the front door and just meowed to go out instead of going through the cat door. So what in this noise gotten into this cat running in and out? So I went to the cat door. I went to the front door and opened it, let the cat out. The cat ran about 3 or 4 paces and stopped and looked back at me as if to say, aren't you going to follow? And so I said, well, okay, because it wasn't unusual for me and the cat to go for a walk. And so the cat ran across the street, and I ran across the street, and the neighbor had some really tall grass. It hadn't been cut. It was about a foot tall. And the cat got down on her hands and knees, and she started stalking very slowly and very carefully. So I got behind the cat and walked behind her. She was obviously wanting to show me something. And so she did this for about 10 feet, and then suddenly she pounced into the air and landed in this little clearing. So I had a flashlight with me, and I went over and shined it down. There was a pile of cooked wieners on the ground there.
What?
This cat thought the cat thought it was stalking these live wieners and catching them and bringing them back to the house, and she had them stacked behind the speakers in the house. And she wanted me to come and catch one for myself, because it said, well, this human's so obviously so poor at hunting, this is something he can catch. So she brought me over to where these damned wieners were on this pile, and there she was. She pounced on the wiener and ran off with the thing and put it behind the speaker with the rest of them.
I'm sorry, my connection is only just reconnected. What was she after? Because I really wanted to hear it.
It pounced on a wiener.
Wait, like a packet?
Cat thought wieners were live little animals.
That's amazing.
It was weird, and I had to clean all the wieners out behind my speakers.
Oh my god.
Cats are goddamn amazing sometimes.
Illya, have you seen the video of the cat that brought a duck into the house, and the owners thought the duck was dead, and then they moved towards it, and it isn't, it's alive.
Most of the things my cat brought in my house were live. All the cats, unless they were a wiener. Other than that, they were usually live, then she'd let them go. One time she put a mouse down in the very end of my shoe, a dead mouse, down in the very end of my shoe, and I put my shoe on the next morning, and my toe went squish, and I dumped it out, and there was a dead mouse in my shoe.
Your cats were very, I want to say, inventive?
Well, they were very prolific hunters, most of them.
My goodness.
My dad.
Never heard of cats just like, hey, I brought you food, like actual food.
Apparently, the cats that I grew up, well, I'm not going to say grew up with because I was 2. The cats we had when I was an itty bitty baby, apparently my dad told me the story recently. So it brought a rabbit in, and it could have gone anywhere to eat this rabbit, but it chose my mum's white shag carpet, I believe. And they heard like a gnawing sound. And my dad came out to find this cat eating the rabbit's head.
Oh.
And he was like, yeah, we had to throw that carpet away, that rug.
I would think so. How disgusting.
And then recently his current cat, he said he was in his study and he heard this really strange noise. And he came out, and they get tree frogs. Usually the tree frogs stay below the house. They like to go into my dad's spa. But Claude had got hold of one of it and had brought it inside and was nomming on it. The frog was fine. Like they got the frog away from Claude and put it outside, and as far as where it was fine. But he said, I've never heard a noise like that, and I hope I never hear it again, because this frog was apparently screaming and he could hear it.
God.
He's just apparently just numbing.
So is Scribbler eating her potato now?
I don't know. She said she'd be right back, so I told her maybe she's taking the cat outside.
Hot potato.
I don't know.
Hot potato.
She's gonna enjoy a hot potato.
Go back, and this time get a piece of meat.
Go back to the butcher's. They have some nice steak for
well,
it.
Combined with your cat and Scribbler's cat, you've got wieners and potato, so...
No. I'll have things I never thought I would hear in my life for 500, please. Goodness. Wieners and potatoes.
Remind me, wieners are sausages, right?
Yes.
Okay, we don't refer to them as that really
like,
here, so I was like, I think that's what it is, and I was picturing sausages.
We generally call them hot dogs.
Oh, well, the hot dog, well, yeah, but a hot dog is usually when it's in a bun. Here, at least.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the confusing part. People call it both things. Let me have a hot dog, and I'll put it in my hot dog. You know, it's kind of weird.
Here in Denmark, we just call the whole thing the hot dog.
Because then you go to Bunnings, you can have the sausage, but you can have a sausage sandwich from the sausage sizzle. Bunnings for $2, except they haven't done that because of COVID.
It's very weird thing to say because, of course, we wouldn't call it that in Denmark because we have our own words for it. So,
You can ask any Australian what a sausage sizzle is, and they'll tell you exactly. And especially if you say a Bunnings one, because Bunnings is a particular store, and every Sunday they would have a stall out the front. It's just like, cooking up sausages and putting on bread and stuff and onion.
Danish people are. We are of course very generally we are nice people, but we are also just very, very chill about something, and it has to be either something very specific or over a long-term thing before we really flip out about something. But otherwise, we're all generally cool, calm, and chill people in my experience, at least.
When I was working, I think it was 1984. What was that, about 35 years ago? And we camped when we worked because we worked on the river. And then one night at a campsite, there was a couple about 20 feet away, and they were from Denmark, and they were just riding through America. They were just hitchhiking and riding through America, and just renting cars sometimes. And I invited them to come to my house. I lived about 100 miles away at the time, and I said, "You guys come by the house and stay for a few days." And they came up to the house, and they were the most wonderful people to be around. I had such a good time with them. And they spent a week with me. And the one most memorable thing is they gave me this piece of candy, and they called it a salt bomb.
Ah!
And I had never had anything like that before.
It's okay for anyone who has never tried Danish candy before. It's literally what it says in the title. It's like a piece of licorice covered in salt.
Well, the way this one worked is, it was very sweet, wonderful, sweet piece of candy. And then you put it in your mouth and you sucked on it a while. And after a while, it broke through to where this big wad of salt was. And suddenly your mouth was just full of salt.
Yep.
And I just spit the thing.
We like our salty candy for some reason, our bitter salty candy.
I guess you
Could
do.
make a
We
joke.
have literally, we have something called a saltfish, which is literally the same thing.
Yeah, it makes kind of sense on salt. It didn't make as much sense on candy to me, but
Everything.
But
is
apparently we
robots.
like those things in Denmark.
So I left on shitting crows and come back to salting fish. What?
you eat the potato.
No, I did not eat the potato.
We went from talking about cats to talking about Danish people and candy.
There we go.
Because those things all string together
Or not.
perfectly.
One final thing I wanted to mention is that I was talking to my Danish friends who were staying with me, and we were talking about things, and they were talking about going into McDonald's. And so they went into McDonald's, and they said, and one of the things on the menu was a Danish. And so, a Danish breakfast, this will be great. Said, because we like meat and potatoes and all sorts of things. He said, and we ordered it, and they brought out a little piece of cake. We were astonished. This isn't what Danes eat for breakfast.
Yeah,
Like English muffin and Aussie steakhouse.
A Danish is literally just like a cake.
Yeah, pastry here.
Literally, one of the names that people like to call me is pastry because, Danish.
It's quirky and party, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. They started it. It's so much fun because I remember when me and my family visited England a couple of years ago, and we were like, okay, we've never tried an English breakfast before, and I want to see what it was like because a Danish breakfast, that is just cereal and maybe some bread with honey or marmalade or
toast.
Whatever. Yeah, toast pretty much. And then we got the plates filled with all the eggs and the bacon and the sausages. It's like the classic English breakfast. Just sit here
hang on.
they eat this every day?
No, we don't.
No.
We have it on Sundays. But it's only a proper English breakfast if it had half a grilled tomato that you don't eat and some fried blood pudding.
Ugh.
It did.
Oh, yep, you had a proper full one then. Yeah, I don't eat those either.
We had never eaten so much at a breakfast before.
The way you're describing,
Yep.
the way you're describing a Danish breakfast, Johnny, I was just like, that sounds normal.
We are very plain on certain things.
No, that's what we
Yeah,
do
that's,
here.
that's the
Things-
same thing that we have here as well. It's just that if you're going for the proper English, it's actually more of a brunch.
The things here, things change a lot. I mean, before I was a child, back in the 40s and 50s, people would eat bacon and eggs and toast and potatoes and all sorts of things for breakfast. But as life became more fast paced, people would just get a bowl of cereal. When I grew up, that's what I'd eat every morning, was a bowl of cereal, and that's just.
That's
Mhm.
implying if
Same.
people, actually eat breakfast and they don't skip it, like people.
Like you do.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Starry,
I
had to shout at you so much at that convention.
mean, you don't have I encourage people to eat breakfast, but then I do not listen to my own preachings.
I was about to say, practice what you preach.
Yeah,
Should we return to
the
movies?
scribblers
Shall
go
we?
next, I believe.
Did you finish off talking about Watchmen?
I mean, I sort of did. I feel like I know that the me later is going to go, you forgot to say this! But honestly, it's been, 10 years since I've seen this film. And, I know that
Left enough of an impact on you, though.
it really did. I avoided everything to do with it because I was just like, it's disgusting, sort of that mentality. But now I'm just like, I was just the wrong age and the wrong group, and it just, yeah. I will always remember the hippies offering flowers and then getting gunned down. It's kind of topical in this day and age, isn't it? The people.
That's based on a real thing with the idea of hippies putting flowers into guns during the Vietnam protests.
Yeah, but it's like we
So
haven't learned anything.
Right. We should move on because Johnny's just said it's gone past 10 p.m.
Ah,
We'll be quiet. So
Yeah, and here where I live, people want others to be quiet around that time, so I am going to speak a bit more quiet now.
it's past 10 p.m. here too, so I totally understand.
it's like close to 6 a.m. for you, isn't
9
it?
minutes past 6, yes.
There we go. So
Thank God for
So
double
we're on to
espresso.
we're on to the final one, which is my pick then. But as a last, just a little addendum. Even if you didn't like the Watchmen film, watch the Watchmen. Watch. Experience.
The Watchmen?
Enjoy. Tune in with the Watchmen TV series. I think it's on HBO or HBO Max, but it's very much worth checking that one out. It is far better than the movie.
It's not as graphic,
it's
right?
still in that it's still violent. Won't lie, it's still violent. It takes place during a race riot, but it is still the same Watchmen universe, and the idea of what if these real life historical events existed in a time period where superheroes were a thing, and superheroes are just as corrupt and human as everybody else. So it's worth checking that one out because it's better than the film, and also Zack Snyder had nothing to do with it. Right, my film, which is the thing that inspired me to ask people on this podcast in the first place and to think up this particular theme for a podcast, is one that is generally lauded as being one of the tentpole films of the horror genre. It's made by a very famous director, stars a very famous actor. It's gone on to win it wasn't well received when it first came out, but it's gone on to win all sorts of awards and things afterwards. And as much as I can admire the filmmaking that went into it, for that same thing I said before about I cannot divorce myself, I physically cannot divorce creator from creation, and therefore I don't like this film, and I do not, I cannot and do not enjoy it, and that is The Shining, the Stanley Kubrick version from the 80s. So does anybody here know anything about The Shining, the story or anything like that, or have seen it?
I have seen the original movie, and I did quite enjoy it, but recently, earlier in the podcast, was the whole of separating creator from creation. I can get, and I know some of the stories, so I can guess why you have a problem with it.
Yeah, we are going to get into that. Illya, Starry?
Well, let's not give up. Before we get into the movie, why don't you tell us why Stanley Kubrick is such an enemy of yours?
It's not so much that he's an enemy of mine as I just cannot gel with his style of filmmaking. Same way that you don't like Quentin Tarantino. Even before you knew anything about him, you just didn't like his films. I'm that way with Kubrick, that I've watched, and this is not from a place of ignorance, I've watched his entire oeuvre I just don't like them. It's like 2001: A Space Odyssey. I found it very dull, very boring. It's supposed to be a think piece. I was so bored to tears by the end that I think I'd lost the ability to think.
Well, yeah, but that one, you know, that you had to live in 1970 to appreciate that one, because none of that filming, there was no film in the world like that. Nothing had ever been. Those special effects hadn't even been attempted. It was just an amazing looking thing to see. And nowadays it looks very dated and old. And if you just had to go by the story alone, I think you'd fall asleep in the middle of it.
I think that might be part of it, is that my context does not really suit what that film was setting out to do.
It's the same thing with, I don't want to get off the subject too much, but it's the same thing with things like Jurassic Park. Now, when I went to see Jurassic Park, that was like when the dinosaurs first came on the screen. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. Oh my God, you'd never seen nothing but rubber Godzillas before this, and now you saw that. But the movie itself bored me to tears. It was a dull fucking movie, in my opinion. So I can understand the difference, the disconnect that could occur there. If I saw Jurassic Park today, I'd walk out. You know, it's dull.
I think that's definitely shown in when they've tried to update it to Jurassic World, and you look at, they've changed a lot of what the film was, because Jurassic Park was, in essence, a horror movie, but Jurassic World is an action movie with some horror elements to it. Like Alien versus Aliens. The Alien is very much a horror thriller, and Aliens is very much an action movie. But I watched a lot more of his stuff than just like the big ones. This is a bad thing to say, but the first one of his I watched was actually Eyes Wide Shut, which, like, that is not a good introduction to Stanley Kubrick, either. Yay, let's watch Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise get naked and have an orgy with a lot of other people in funny masks. What? So I had to study a lot of Kubrick stuff when I did film studies at university, because it's not like what my degree is in. In my first year, we got to do something called a subsidiary subject. So we had our two main subjects, because we had dual honours, and we studied two and got a degree in two different things. And that meant that they had a third component they called subsidiaries. And if you'd taken hard science or social science for your main subjects, you had to go and do something called political science. So I had to do American political sciences, and part of that was looking at American film and media. And I loved the American film and media for what I did. But we did have to watch a lot of Kubrick films. And they're not things I would have gone and sought out on my own. I watched them because I was made to, and then I went and sought out the rest to think, well, maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe this is something that everybody else gets that I just don't. And I think The Shining is one of those films that kind of typifies it for me, because, like you said, Illya, things like 2001: A Space Odyssey or Clockwork Orange were very much of their time, and I don't exist in the right historical context to get the full effect of those, and I fully acknowledge that. But The Shining is still held up as like one of the greatest horror movies of its kind today, and I can admire the filmmaking in that. I think it's got some beautiful cinematography, the soundtrack is excellent, some of the acting is really good, but I still dislike the film because of that creator and creation thing. And I think you had something to say.
I do. I think more than it sounds like. Your point on everything. I was a fan of Stephen King well before I saw The Shining, and I thought The Shining book was really well told. It was a wonderful story, and I thought The Shining movie was shit, and I hated it. And I began to take another look at Stanley Kubrick's films after that. And when you go back and you look at the entire bit of 2001, for example, the movie is kind of crap. I mean, you don't know what the fuck's going on the whole time. It just happened to be set, during the space age in a time when those special effects were great. But the movie really wasn't great, and The Shining certainly wasn't great. Especially if you've read Stephen King. I mean, you expect a certain production from that. The best Stephen King movie I ever saw was the TV movie they did for the one where it was the end of the world. I can't do names. Whatever that one, what was that damn movie?
Salem's Lot?
God almighty. No, it's the one where the world ended.
Apocalypse Now?
No.
well, oh God, why can't I do names?
Hang on,
I know
I
who's
shall
in
go
it.
on the wiki.
Please.
Tell me who's in it and I'll find
Laura San Giacomo, for one. And I can't even do the names of the actors. I'm having trouble with names. I don't remember my brother's names, my employees' names. I don't do well with names. It was one of his more famous movies, and it was quite good.
The Stand.
The Stand. That television movie they made of his was the
Yes.
only Stephen King movie that I thought came close to presenting the material very well. Otherwise, they didn't. And Shining was the worst offender of all. He just didn't. It's like Stanley Kubrick did not know how to tell a story. He got some things right. He did some interesting things, but he was just unable to create a narrative that anyone could follow. And that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things is that I got into Stephen King ironically by listening to his lectures on writing and then going and reading his stuff. Because I was a big fan of Graham Masterton, who was like the English Stephen King from the 70s. And one of the things he said was that when he wrote The Shining, just to give some context, the story, the basic premise of both movie and book, are that a guy called, well, he's called John Torrance in the book, and he's called Jack Torrance in the film, is a recovering alcoholic with a young son who says that he is psychic and has an invisible friend who he talks to, and his wife who's kind of reaching the end of her tether with his alcoholism because he, in a drunken rage a few months earlier, 14 months in the book, 5 months in the film, hurt their son in a drunken rage. And she's quite prepared to leave him if he doesn't stay on the wagon. And he gets a job as a winter caretaker at a hotel up in the mountains, which is shut to the public in the winter, but still needs to looking after, otherwise it would completely freeze solid. The family are the only ones who are going to be there. And when he asks, like, why do you need someone very, very short notice? They say because the last person murdered his wife and children with an axe. And Jack doesn't tell his wife and son about this. He's an aspiring novelist, and so he says, right, this is a way of bringing in money, and the isolation will give me a chance to write my book. While they're there, lots of creepy things start happening, more overtly supernatural in the book than in the film. In the film, it's very touch and go whether or not there is anything supernatural or not, whether or not it's just all in Jack's head. But eventually he goes off the rails, becomes either possessed or goes insane and tries to murder his wife and child until they get away. Now, the major difference with the ending is that in the film, Jack is chasing his son through a hedge maze in the snow with an axe. His wife and son get away in a little snowmobile thing, and Jack is found the next morning frozen to death out in the snow. In the book, there's a big thing made that Jack, one of his tasks as a winter caretaker is to make sure the boiler stays in good nick, because it's an old boiler, and if they don't dump out the hot water every day, it will explode and take up the hotel. They can't turn it off because if they do, all the pipes will freeze and it will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. If they leave it on all the time without taking care of it, it will blow. So that's Jack's job. When he's possessed, he doesn't dump the water out the boiler. And he realizes at the very end of the novel that the boiler's going to explode and he, his wife, and his son are all going to die. So he sends his wife and son away, goes down to the boiler to dump the water, but it still explodes. He saves them, but he dies. The end of the book is about redemption and family love winning out over evil demons within yourself, which is it's a version of Stephen King's own struggle with alcoholism, which he was going through when he wrote it. So it's kind of autobiographical in the idea that he wrote this character as an analog for himself, and the idea that his wife and his child would be the thing that he would be able to turn things around for. And even if he fell off the wagon, his love for them would be what made him do the right thing in the end. The film is all about a man going insane, trying to kill his wife and kid, and then dying. And Stephen King himself said he hated that ending because it took out all the redemptive qualities of the character and reduced him to a caricature, and that it punished him for being weak and human and falling off the wagon instead of proving you could fall off as long as you get back on again. So That's one of the main reasons I don't like the story itself. Illya, Johnny, Starry, do you have any thoughts on the plot before I get into the real reason I don't like this film?
One final thing.
Go on.
I was pissed off they didn't have the topiary animals. Had the turned it into a hedge maze instead of a topiary of animals. But that's it. I'm on for now.
Well, they did put that in the 1997 miniseries version of it, which was much more accurate to the novel, but had the TV budget with TV CGI that was in 1997. So, it wasn't great. But,
I
Johnny?
I remember when I was first, I first saw it on, a night where my dad had gotten his hands on a bunch of, old classic horror movies. We saw Psycho, and we also saw The Shining, which was the first time I had seen each movie. And I remember that I had heard so much about The Shining, so I was ready to be horrified. I was ready to be scarred. And while it wasn't as absolutely dreadfully horrible in the good way that I had expected, it still had some scenes that had some kind of effect on me. So I do remember being scared of this movie. I do remember many of the scenes having this effect on me, and though I couldn't watch the movie without cracking a bit because of here's Johnny, and obvious reasons. Yeah. It was very obvious. But I do remember that even if I didn't was enraptured or taken by the entire storyline, I was still affected by some of the scares. And I guess I had never heard of the original ending to that movie, to the story. So now you're saying it like that, it does make me think more about how they portray the ending. But for me, it has always been a story, because I never knew the original story. It has always been a story to me about a man's descent into madness because of maybe his own weakness, but also just because of the circumstances he found himself in and that he put himself into.
Yeah, that he
as a result of his own actions. I have heard so many theories about whether the ghosts even existed or not, or it was just Jack's own mental health that was just deteriorating more and more and more until he finally snapped. And no game makes the Jacks go cray-cray, and then he tried to axe them off. So, yeah, I'd never heard the original story before.
Well, there was an interview that Stephen King did with the BBC in 2013 where he talked about the fact that the ending was changed, and it was when Doctor Sleep was first published, I think, and before the film had come out, long before the film came out. But because Doctor Sleep being the sequel to The Shining. And one of the quotes he said was, Kubrick knew what he wanted to do with the story, and he hired the novelist Diane Johnson to write a draft of the screenplay based on what he wanted to emphasize, and then he did it himself. I was really disappointed. It's certainly beautiful to look at, but it's been stripped of its primary purpose, which is to tell a story. And he said that he hated Kubrick's, his cold approach, and said, I'm not a cold guy. I think one of the things people relate to in my books is this warmth, this redemptive quality. There's reaching out and saying to the reader, I want you to be a part of this. These characters can be saved. And with Kubrick's Shining, I felt it was very cold, we're looking at these people, but they're like ants in an anthill. Aren't they doing interesting things, these little insects? And the idea that nobody was ever invited to empathize with these characters.
Ironically, the warmest character in there was probably the one Scatman Crothers played.
Exactly, which I have issues, that fucking thing in that. Ooh!
Didn't he?
One black character.
Sorry.
No. It's like one black character. One. He's the best character in it. He goes through all that to come back and rescue them, and he's dead within 30 seconds. Fuck off. Give him something to do. Don't just have Jack jump out and go, he's dead. Oh, that makes me angry. He's like, right, we have a really interesting character, really interesting actor. We've had all this build up to his arrival, and he is just...
Yeah, that was always very, very... there were a couple of things about the movie that always has been weird to me, including that where just, oh no, he's coming back, we're gonna have some more support, we're gonna have to, figure out how to kill Jack, and then, oh, wait, no, he's dead. Never mind.
Do you know what the worst thing is? He
yeah.
lives in the novel.
Oh, boy.
So they
another thing
killed off the black character for no reason.
I think part of me wants to believe that it's because they want to follow the horror stigma of the black guy always dies.
See, that's what I hate about it, though.
Yeah, but the last thing I want to say before we move on to Starry is that another scene that is, as far as I remember, really has no purpose whatsoever is the elevator blood scene, where just they open up, an elevator opens up, and this massive flood of blood just goes down through the halls, covers everything, and it's never mentioned again. And I just sit there like, okay, why? Was it meant to represent something? Is the hotel itself bleeding? Like, what's going on?
Do we have a star?
Yeah. Scribbler's not.
Sorry, give her opinion. Well, it's still recording. You give your opinion.
I don't have one because I haven't seen it, but I was gonna ask the question because I don't remember if this is accurate or not. Didn't the director like overwork them? Like most of the, I can't remember which actor it was. I think it was the female one that she was just emotionally drained. Like, because he was
back. Yes, that's the major thing that I hate about this film. You are exactly right. Her name is Shelley Duvall. Do any of you know anything about her?
She's olive oil.
Yeah, she was olive oil. She was very good as olive oil.
I don't know her, and like when it comes to like rumors about the movie, I've just remember hearing that there was one scene they had to do 127 times because Stanley Kubrick was not satisfied with it.
Yes, that would be the scene with the axe coming through the door and her screaming on the other side of it. 127 times to the point where they were exhausted and right. I don't know why this was. There are rumors, but there's never been anything confirmed around. But Stanley Kubrick, he just took against Shelley Duvall. Now, originally, this is really bizarre because he fought to have her in that role. The studio wanted someone more conventionally attractive to play the leads. They want. Do you know who was actually slated to play Jack Torrance aside from Jack Nicholson? Christopher Reeve, Superman.
Really?
He was the one who was originally slated to play him until...
That would have been so much better.
Well, yeah, exactly, because it's supposed to be that Jack/John is the everyman. That's why he's called John in the original. But Kubrick wanted Jack Nicholson because he thought that he could play psychotic better. And from the very beginning, he knew that he wanted to make a very different story than the book was about. And he thought to have Shelley Duvall because she's interesting to look at. I'm going to just put a link in Mumble Chat, and I will link this in the description of the video.
It's sounding to me like every decision Stanley Kubrick made screwed that movie up. I mean, because I don't think Shelley Duvall was a good choice, and I don't think Jack Nicholson was a good choice. It was rewritten.
I got it.
That article. That's her glamour shot, the black and white one. Shelley Duvall was noted for being unconventional looking. That she wasn't Hollywood glamorous, Hollywood pretty. She has very hooded eyes. She has interesting shaped lips, and she has these incredibly high cheekbones that delve inward and give her face this odd quality to it. There's this uncanny valley look to her. She was incredibly pretty, but she was not conventionally beautiful.
She was not Hollywood pretty.
Exactly. And especially because Stanley Kubrick chose to film the entirety of The Shining in, I think it was 18 millimeters. Either way, he shot it wide frame, wide angle lens, which is one of the reasons why all the corridors have this strange stretched out look. Because when you shoot using that lens, it stretches anything that it's focused on. Now, usually that's done for landscape shots to make them look vast and impressive. But Kubrick chose to film the actors with that same lens, which gives them this uncanny valley, unmatching look. And he thought that her face and Jack Nicholson's faces would look better than somebody conventionally pretty in that regard. So he knew what he was doing. He knew his craft. And that's one of the reasons I say I can admire some of the stuff that he was doing, because he knew his stuff. But the moment she stepped on set, he seemed to take against her, and to the point where other members of the cast and crew stepped in and said, "Can you leave her alone?" Jack Nicholson at one point, when she'd done like 60 takes of screaming and going backwards upstairs, and she'd fallen over and hurt herself, and she was lacking sleep, and she was really stressed, and she was dehydrated because he wouldn't let them pause between shots. And on like shot 60, Jack Nicholson said, "Can we stop? She's struggling." And Kubrick said, "I know, that's what I want." To the point where this shoot took months, and every single day he did this to her. And her hair started to fall out from stress. And she stopped eating. She was chain smoking like crazy. He would shout at her, lambast her. If she was resting on set, he would make her get up and come back on set because he didn't want her to rest. Even if she wasn't in shot, she had to stand there. And she had a nervous breakdown as a result of this film. And to promote it, she talked to people afterwards and said, "I wouldn't have given the performance that I did without him doing that. And I'll admit now, it's an iconic performance I gave, but I hated making the movie." And that's where we really get into the meat of this, that she did not really recover from that nervous breakdown. She started abusing drugs, started abusing alcohol as a direct result of that. And to this day, she now lives in her car because she has squandered away everything, and nobody will employ her because she's too much of an insurance risk because of the after effects of that nervous breakdown. And I'm going to show you just a picture of what she looks like now compared to then.
Oh my.
She's younger than Jack Nicholson. It's a bit of a change, isn't it?
Yeah.
But, it also has been 40 years.
It has been 40 years, but that's more than 40 years of change. And it's especially this thing of she hasn't got enough money to pay for healthcare. So she's living in her car in order to afford painkillers.
Well, let me ask you this question. Since you were in film, you studied these things in college. Why did people think Kubrick was so great? I never saw it.
They thought it's because he was experimental. Now, I'm basing this on just hearsay because I don't think he's great. I think that he knew his craft really well, and he knew his tools really well. But I think a lot of people did that, and a lot of people didn't get the same chances that he got for one reason or another. But I think it was a lot to do with he was willing to take chances on new technologies, and also he was connected. He knew people within industries, and he got the projects that he wanted to work on, and he got to do interesting things with those projects, because once you get to a certain level of fame, nobody's going to tell you no. And by the time he got to The Shining, he'd made enough films that people were like, do what you want to do. Things like The Shining is an unsettling film. I think I put a lot of that down to the music, which is more of just a soundscape than a musical score. And that was nothing to do with Kubrick. That was his composer. But as good an auteur as anybody is, I cannot and will not absolve them of the need to treat their actors and their crew with respect. And by all accounts, that was not the first time nor the last time that Kubrick did that. And one of the many circulating rumors, because like I said, Shelley Duvall herself either didn't or couldn't confirm or deny any of this, was that he'd picked her because he fancied her, and she rebuffed him. So he took it out on her on set. He couldn't get rid of her.
Well, that explains a lot.
He couldn't get rid of her because he'd fought for her to be in the film, and she wasn't the studio's first choice anyway. And they didn't have a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of this in industries, especially in the film industry. When you look back over the years, there's been a lot of open secrets and things like that. But it tends to be a well-worn story that actresses who are blacklisted, and even actors who are blacklisted, look at Brendan Fraser, it's generally because they've rebuffed somebody that they, as far as the industry is concerned, shouldn't have rebuffed. Yeah, it's very sad. because Shelley Duvall was a very, very good actress, and it just didn't work. So, yeah, this is why I don't like The Shining. It's one of those, I can admire the tools, and I can admire what Kubrick did with his tools, but I don't think putting it all together, it was really worth it.
I think it's the story of his films.
Yeah. Individually, the things he did within these films might have been admirable. Put them all together, and what the fuck? Go away, you nasty, pervy old man.
I don't know how much he had to do with the special effects in 2001, but that was almost worth the whole movie just to see them.
Can you explain the baby at the end to me, please? Because I genuinely don't get that.
I could have when I read the book by Arthur C. Clarke in the 60s, but not anymore. I can't remember it.
There's quite a lot of things, like at the end of auteur films, where I watch them and just go, am I just being dumb? Because I don't get that. And I admit it, I'm not the brightest, shiniest diamond in the jewelry box when it comes to film theory.
I mean, this is telling a lot when you take Arthur C. Clarke's story and make it into something no one can understand, and then you take Stephen King's story. Both of these are great authors. You turn it into trash. I mean, that's saying something.
King described The Shining as a mean film. That a film that hurts, I think was the phrase, where he said Kubrick had set out to make a film that hurts people. That it was meant to make people feel unsettled and uncomfortable, both in front of and behind the camera and then in the audience. And he said he set out to do that, and he did that perfectly, but it wasn't my story that he told. It was his own, and my story was just a vehicle for that.
Which person was that?
Sound like you're just giving the audience the finger.
Yeah, pretty much. Sorry?
Which person was that? Sorry, I was distracted.
Kubrick, what he did with Stephen King's stories, and apparently what he did with Arthur C. Clarke's story as well. I've never liked him.
This is where I feel like a pleb, because the only story I know by Clarke is, I think he wrote Alice in Wonderland?
No, that's Lewis Carroll.
See, that's how little I know.
That's not a bad thing to only know that. Lewis Carroll wrote one book, and that was it.
Oh, he did?
Well, he wrote Through the Looking Glass as well,
yeah.
But he wasn't an author. He was a mathematician who wrote that when he took some drugs.
Yeah. But actually, this entire thing just makes me think. Not to once again plug and a reference to an earlier podcast, but this just reminds me of the argument, or not argument, but the discussions we had about translating books to movies. Because some directors, like Stanley Kubrick, they will take the original story and then twist it to tell a story of their own. Sometimes it can provide another angle, like another way to look at the story, but other times it just becomes something so entirely different. Like just by changing the ending, Kubrick had changed the story so much, like the entire mood so much, like he probably changed a lot of things. I'm sure he did change a lot of things, but the ending most, as far as I understand, is one of the biggest outliers of how much the mood of the story changes just by changing the ending.
I mean, it's the themes of the story. I think that was one of the major things that King objected to, was that story, more than any other at that point, was very close to his own lived experiences. Like, the thing that inspired him to write The Shining was he was in a hotel and said he had an experience with a ghost, and he didn't know if it was real or not because he was deep in alcoholism by that point. But it inspired him to write The Shining, and the whole struggle he had with alcoholism, and also being a parent, where he found that being a parent was so stressful that sometimes he would have these urges thinking, why won't you go to bed? Why won't you go to sleep? Oh, I could just kill you. And then immediately think, oh, fuck, where did that come from? That he would have these moments of frustration and anger at his children, and then immediately think, oh, fuck, I'm their father. I'm not supposed to think like that. And it took him to the natural conclusion of, well, what if somebody took off the limiters and somebody acted on those weird inhibitions that other people keep a lid on? And that's where The Shining came from. And that's why he said the ending was meant to be about love for your kids will ultimately stay your hand. But in the film it didn't, and that must have felt like a proper slap in the face of, no, when you fall off the wagon, you're fucked and you deserve to die.
Yeah, like, it's just, From an experience and the story that personal, changing it to something like that must feel like the greatest of all middle fingers.
Yep, certainly felt like it. Right, so we've been talking quite some time. It is 10:15 at night, and I kind of need to go and eat because my parents are back now. Would anybody like to add anything, or are we okay to end the podcast here?
I think I just want to end in that this podcast has been, for me at least, has just been a very big example of first off, there are many rails that the conversation can go on, but also when it comes to liking or disliking things, we all have opinions. We all have the different things that we like or dislike about, let's say, a movie, but they can quickly change depending on if you focus on the movie itself or the production behind it, the people behind it. It's just, we all have opinions. They can be influenced in many ways and therefore affect how we enjoy certain mediums and medias and just sources of entertainment once you know the stories behind them.
Yep, there's always more than meets the eye, like Transformers. Right, okay. So this has been Babble Scribbler. I have been Scribbler, and I have been joined by the lovely cast who are going to say goodbye now. Illya.
It's so nice to have been with you all. Thank you.
Johnny Furno.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a wonderful, wonderful time.
Starryflame.
Thanks for having me.
And in spirit at the end, Caitbug. Bye, Caitbug.
Bye, Caitbug.
Bye, Caitbug.
Bye,
Bye,
cutie.
Trainbug. I mean, Caitbug.
Trainbug. Trainbug. Right, bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Right. Unfortunately, I do need to go. You guys are more than welcome to keep using the Mumble server if you want to.
I will have to go because I have to get up
'cause
early for work.
It's really late for you.
I have
'cause
to
you're
get
an hour
up
ahead
at
of me.
6, so I will have to go to bed.
Yeah, go to bed, Johnny. Shoot, go to bed.
All right.
I think with Mumble constantly disintegrating on me, I should probably leave it.
Right, so we'll leave it here then.
Yeah. This was wonderful. Thank you for inviting me, Scribble and Illya. It was wonderful to meet you.
It was good to have you on, Johnny.
I'll just sit over here and be chopped liver.
Oh,
Sorry, no.
It's fine. It's fine.
They
Sorry.
don't know
I'm
each
always-
other. That's the whole
No, I know.
thing.
I was just like, I don't get prey. No, it's fine. It's
get prey.
it's
I'm
me
always
being a
stuck in some
drama queen.
library with you anyway.
You're stuck in some library with Illya.
No, but we're
You
free
spent
now.
literally an entire year stuck in there.
I did.
I'm sorry, I always
I
enjoy
wonder-
being with you.
The thing, I wonder if there were any other Alicons in there, or if it was just us for an entire year, and it was like, Illya is my only companion, and he's watching goddamn Glee again and again and again and again for an entire year. It's just like, are you up to socialism? No, shh, hang on. Rachel's appeared. Fine, I'll leave you for a month or so. It's like there's somehow a wall in the Alicon realm of just like chalk as each time passes, just this constant
Just in the
endless
middle of nothingness.
yeah, and it's just like just me looking at Illya like, how about now? Nope. Puts another tally on the wall.
No.
How about
Notice how Celestia and Luna never even give a shit about what happens to
They're like, oh, fuck, it's those narrators. Nobody will care about that.
Illya? Should we go? No, shush. They're singing a pop song.
I'm not good at either voice, but I can do a Wuna voice, so I can first Wuna and convict you. There. I tried to do it, damn it. I did it ages ago.
Ooh, our next one needs to be a musical. We need to do a
We
musical.
tried that. Remember, that's how we ended up with the song Shit Sandwich.
I am so glad I wasn't
that's
part of
right.
that, because like when I listened to it, I was like, no one
It
has
was-
any tempo. But then I listened to
That's
the
the
actual song and I was like,
point.
there is no tempo. That would be a horror story for me because I need a tempo. I needed
But the entire
pitch.
point of the Shit Sandwich song is that it was meant to be shit, because it was a song about being shit.
Yeah, but the octaves
So,
were all
yeah.
over the place, and like I would not.
That was the point.
No, I know.
It was meant to be bad.
But I'm saying, as a singer, that would be a nightmare.
I would agree.
As someone who
yeah,
like has been
Goosey
training.
hated that.
Yeah, I bet.
Oh, that just reminds me. I need to make non-blind reactions to those first love story, better love story
Well,
episodes.
at least those two are only like short, each one of them.
Yeah, but they're so wonderful. I rewatched them a lot, just like
Aww,
because like
including your cameo.
That was
Shut up.
adorable. I want to say, actually, I just thought of this. If you did make me a villain, I could literally do a villain in this song. I'm just saying.
We'll see.
Oh,
I have
oh.
plans,
I'm
but you don't know what
just
they are yet. And I
giving
can't
you
say
ideas.
because Mr. Blind Reactor.
sorry.
Mr. Blind Reactor's here, so can't.
Hello. But sorry. If you become the villain, can I be your henchman since we're both fire themed?
We'll see.
Okay.
I'm the writer, so why are you asking her?
Yeah.
Oh right. Look, do you know something that I can talk to?
We still need a showdown. But remember, like ages ago, Xena. I don't remember who. I think it was Xena. It was like, I want to draw art of Scribbler and you like having this battle because like everyone's afraid of Scribbler in like the Aprilverse, and then there's me who like is proclaimed to be the fear and like an evil alicorn.
Nobody's frightened. of.
Nobody takes me seriously, even in the real world.
I already have
Oh, God, there it goes
plans
again.
and things. We'll see. Right, I do need to go.
All
So
right.
it's been lovely speaking to you all. But
you too.
Good night.
I,
Bye.
Bye.
bye,
everyone.
I think is
Bye.
what you're saying.